At the Xbox Showcase, they showed some really cool games that could be good or could not be good. You know, the new Fable game that's going to be coming out and the new Starfield that's going to be coming out. And by the way, I hope both of those games are good. And I hope when we get them, they're just the best games. But the game I want to talk about today is Star Wars Outlaw. And to be honest with you guys, because it is a Ubisoft game, I have some really mixed opinions on it, just for the simple fact that, you know, for me, my exposure to Ubisoft is from their Assassin's Creed games. So the last thing I really want to play is Assassin's Creed Star Wars. Assassin's Creed really hasn't been good since Black Flag, and Black Flag, the only reason it was really good was because of the pirate elements of the game, like the ship combat and stuff was just really well done. Now, past the fear that Star Wars Outlaw is just going to be an Assassin's Creed game in a Star Wars body, I was kind of hoping that this Ubisoft game would be more akin to KOTOR than, let's say, a traditional Ubisoft game where you're just playing as an established character and you're playing through their story instead of kind of creating your own and making your own choices. And the reason I was hoping for more of a KOTOR-esque game than a traditional Ubisoft game with a Star Wars coat of paint on it is just for the simple fact that I think games like KOTOR have just so much more replayability for the players, and the choices that affect outcomes in the game is just way better than just playing a character and going through their story in a kind of gimmicky open world, because the open world helps serves as immersion in the KOTOR games more than it does in games like Assassin's Creed. Also, when you play games like Assassin's Creed, they don't really have much in the way of replayability in them. They're kind of one and done games. Where KOTOR, you can play the game 3 or 4 different times at least and have just different playstyles every single time. And I'm willing to give Star Wars Outlaws a try if it is a game with good reviews, because even though it's not necessarily a game that I would like to play if it was a non-Star Wars game, I want to show that Star Wars still has a place in video games and that these gaming companies should make more Star Wars games, because we haven't really gotten anything good in like a decade except for that Lego Star Wars game. And no offense to Legos, they make good games, but it's just really sad to me that the best Star Wars game we've had in a decade is literally a Lego Star Wars game. That is ridiculous. Now, onto the gameplay trailer that they had for Star Wars Outlaws, is that it looked really good, but I kind of want to see what the game looks like when I'm playing it myself instead of in a controlled environment that Ubisoft controls. Because we've seen with games in the past that just because it has a good gameplay trailer doesn't necessarily mean that the game is going to be good or look like that. In fact, I think Ubisoft is a very big perpetrator in making things look way better in trailers than they do in the actual game themselves, with like Watch Dogs, for example, and The Division. So even though that the game looked good and it looked like it played good, I'm gonna want to see it for myself, because Ubisoft has been kind of scummy on that in the past. But please do not get me confused. I am just a very critical person, but I do want to see this game succeed, because as a Star Wars fan, we haven't gotten anything in a decade. If this turns out to be a really good game and Ubisoft is very successful with this Star Wars game, that could influence other game studios to say, hey, we got something to offer to Star Wars, let's give the Star Wars fans something they'll enjoy. And then all of a sudden, instead of getting 5 games in 10 years, we might be getting 20. Like, it's still crazy to me that under EA, one of the biggest publishers in the video game industry, we literally got 5 mid-Star Wars games. And I know some of you guys liked Jedi Survivors and Fallen Order, but man, that game was just not polished. And it was just one of those one-and-done games. So I could understand that Fallen Order, when it came out, was a breath of fresh air. But let's be honest here, guys, it was a mid-game. A game that was literally it, but better, was Sekiro. But if Ubisoft can be successful with this game, and it can show that there's still a marketplace for Star Wars in gaming, then instead of getting 5 mediocre Star Wars games, we can have like 20 games. 5 of them can be mediocre, you know, the ones published by EA in a decade. And then we could get a few good ones. And then all of a sudden, us Star Wars fans, instead of being starved for content, we're getting more than enough. And, you know, the mediocre ones don't sting anymore because Well, we're also getting good ones too, so it's cool. Thank you for watching the video. The main point of this video is just to say that I am very skeptical about Star Wars Outlaw, but I do hope it's good. Give me your thoughts and opinions on Ubisoft and the newest Star Wars game that'll be coming out, and...
I'm sorry, sir. It's time for you to leave.